Welcome back, everybody. This Week in America on the Blue Funk Broadcasting Radio Network. Great to have you with us on the program today. Our website, thisweekinamerica.us. As mentioned in the open, with us on the show today, the author of the book of Dad 2, T is T-O-O, more quotes, anecdotes for a lifetime of wisdom. Dr. Robert Benson with us on the program. Dr. Benson, welcome to the show.
Hey, Rick. Thank you for having me. Thanks for welcome.
It is our pleasure, and I want to start talking about the whole concept behind this, the whole Book of Dad concept. You were a long-distance dad in the military, and that was your way of keeping in touch and sharing some wisdom and just having that ongoing relationship with the family. And it went so well, you obviously decided when you got back you were going to continue and put it in book form.
Absolutely, yeah. Just using the modern technology that's out there, wrote a few text messages to my kids, and seemed to go over real well. I may have even gotten a little full of myself and say, hey, I'm going to try to become a little philosophical here, and just pulled together quite a few of them and had enough to publish. And then, as you said before, the second book is more of a extending of those quotes and just adding more thought-provoking things. And I even talk a little bit more about myself in the book of that, too.
You know, what's interesting, and I mentioned the whole concept of the long-distance dad. I want to talk about that for a few seconds, and we'll talk about some of the items in the book. It is so difficult because you are gone. Was that sort of like the lifeline you had with your family? I mean, it wasn't that many years ago when you were off deployed, you basically had to wait for letters to come and go, wait for the postman before you had any correspondence to and from the family. Was that your lifeline where you could reach out because of modern technology and keep in touch with the family?
Oh, absolutely. Without a doubt, that was the one thing I had to cling to instead of, like you say, sitting around waiting for letters and such. You were able to use the modern technology, the phones and things like that. But just to kind of to clear something up is that, Rick, that wasn't only when I was in the military. This was since I've been retired from the military as well, having to get employment where I can and could and still trying to maintain some semblance of fatherhood and a family life. And again, that using modern technology was able to help me be able to maintain a presence in my family's lives, particularly my children.
Well, and that's an interesting point you bring up because there are so many parents that have to travel for their jobs. Many can't go back and forth on a daily basis. They have to take the job. They have to chase that employment. So they're gone for maybe the entire week before they're able to come home. And this is a way to reach out. What does that do in terms of relationship? And I'll talk specifically about the deployment now, where you're overseas, you're staying in contact with the family, yet you're really not there for important decisions. You may be able to talk about them, but you're really not there. What does that do to the relationships with your wife and with the children?
Well, that's such a very good question because ultimately it's just very, very true when people say out of sight, out of mind. No matter the foundation that you build, people are still going to be able to make decisions, and usually when a decision is made, it's made based on the surroundings that you have available. And if you're not there, you're not a variable or a factor that's going to go into that decision that needs to be made. For instance, a kid might know they have to be home at this time or that time, but if they know that, well, Dad's not coming back until Friday, so I think I can push it up a little bit closer to the time I'm supposed to be home. Or just not just that, just various other peer pressure type of decisions that children or anybody are faced with. They know what the consequences are or not, and they tend to adjust accordingly.
Is it difficult when you're gone? Your wife basically is running the household at that point. You come back, and is it difficult adjusting to that role? Maybe you're back for the weekend, so now you're looking for things to be done possibly with your direction, or you're deployed and you've been gone for 6 months, and then you come back. Is it difficult making that transition?
Oh, absolutely, it is. As a matter of fact, you find yourself having to re-establish things and reset rules and roles and stuff. Because if you think about it, children and people are very, very manipulative. I mean, they have a tendency to play one against the other, especially children. And it's, like I said before, the other parent's not around. It makes it that much easier to work around or through the other parent. But from a head of household perspective, it's extremely difficult because you have to maintain discipline, not only as far as behavior-wise, but for spending and managing the affairs of the family. There's a lot of things that go into, running a household.
Right.
That your presence is of paramount importance, and if you're not there, And then when you come back, you have to definitely reestablish things over again. And it's a never-ending process, but it's not always as bad because thank goodness I have a great wife and a good spouse who does her level best to maintain those things that we try to establish. Now, no one's perfect, including myself. So again, there's a possibility, and there's been times when we've had to readjust and reestablish those rules and procedures, if you will.
Well, and you talk about that in the Book of Dad, too, more quotes and anecdotes for a lifetime of wisdom. You're listening to This Week in America. Dr. Robert Benson is our guest on the program. The website for the book is thebookofdad.net. There are 2 books available. You get all the information at the website. Also, go to our website, thisweekinamerica.us, and link on and get information on the books and on Dr. Benson. We mentioned that came about as you're away from your family. You're staying in touch with texting, with tweeting, with emailing, staying in touch. When did you get to the point where you're thinking, you know what, I've got a lot of these things. I've been thoughtful. I've tried to explain things. I've tried to be thoughtful in presenting this to my children. I'm going to write a book out of this. How did that come about?
Well, I just it's actually writing something, Rick, or publishing something is something I've always wanted to do, and I've done my share of it in academia anyway, with publishing and writing and stuff. And I'm not sure at what point it came to where I wanted to publish them, but it definitely came about at like a revelation pace, so to speak. It's like, wow, look at what I have here. Probably after about the 250th one I wrote. If I could add a quantity to it, I guess. But it's hard to say exactly when I got that itch, if you will. And then once I wrote the first one, it took me about another couple of years to just write another one. And I'm not really sure if I believe I'm going to write another one, I'll say that. But I really wish I could pinpoint when I did before, because I would have written something a long time before I did if I could. But the other thing about that is I would say is that if you try to figure out when you're going to do something, or why or how, you lose your spontaneity,
Yes.
so to speak, and it's not authentic. So it's kind of difficult to say that. I'll just say that when the feeling hit me, I decided to run with it, and I'm not exactly sure when that was.
Well, and the book is very easy to read. It's the Book of Dad, too, talks about Dr. Benson's background, where he got where he is today, why he has the views that he has. It gives you an understanding of who the gentleman is. The Book of Dad, too, it's available at the website, thebookofdad.net. Let's talk a little bit about where you came from, basically from poverty to a PhD. Talk a little bit about the beginning and how you got from there to really motivating yourself to get a PhD, along with many other degrees.
Well, that's a very good question, because as you mentioned before, I was kind of from a poor area. However, I didn't really realize how poor I was until I left there, or as I was coming through high school. There was some instances where I realized that I wasn't rich, but I never really thought I was poor, because I was able to survive in the streets and able to, do well enough coming up and around peers, if you will. But it wasn't until I came into the military, which, by the way, before I came in the military, I had never been more than about 100 miles or so away from where I was from. And it was there that I realized that I was basically poverty-stricken, and that's not necessarily financial, that's intellectual. That's understanding that there's truly people out there who are smarter, better, more intelligent, more seasoned on a number of levels. And I had to really, for lack of a better term, get my stuff in order and educate myself to become who I was. And I don't think there was a better place I could have gone at that time to realize that, because in the military, you're kind of a walking billboard of who you are. Your name is there, excuse me, your rank is there.
Right.
And your rank says everything about you. If you're an officer, you're an educated person. If you're not an officer, it's assumed that you're not educated. And me, I wanted that appearance that I was somebody who was accomplished, who had done these things, who had gotten themselves educated, who had learned some things. And it was one of the best things I could have ever done.
There are always, I think, in everybody's lives, those little benchmarks, things that happen that's sort of a transitional period from, okay, this is the motivation I need to go forward. You start off the book and you're talking about 6 hours of bus ride home. It's fascinating reading. Talk a little bit about that experience and how that really changed your life.
Well, it actually, that 6 hours of bus ride home, as I mentioned, is I was kind of returning from a trip down in Atlanta. and I witnessed firsthand some reenactments of slave trading and things like that. And I had retired from the military, and I really wasn't exactly happy with the job I was doing. I was doing a job in education, but it really wasn't the field that I've had trained in and got my education in. But to make a long story short, it really caused me to reflect where I was. We were riding back on the bus, and I just got to thinking about everything that had been going on in my life. I started thinking about the first day I got on the bus and, the train, and went into the Air Force. It got me to thinking about the things that I had gone through that was really difficult at the time, that kind of motivated me to who I am now. But in the big scheme of things, even though those things were difficult at the time, it kind of made me reflect that times were even rougher for the folks whose lives it were to be slaves and secondhand citizens even back then. But it in itself got me to thinking about where I was and where I was heading. While I wasn't a failure at the time, I still wasn't where I wanted to be, and I knew I needed to do something to become, how can I say, satisfied or more comfortable with who I was, get comfortable in my own skin. And at that time, I really wasn't. And the only out that I had then was just to simply write about it.
Dr. Robert Benson is our guest on This Week in America. His new book is called The Book of Dad 2, and T is spelled T-O-O. Information at the book at his website, which is thebookofdad.net. You can always go to our website, thisweekinamerica.us, and link up there and get some information on the book as well. The book is The Book of Dad 2, more quotes, anecdotes for a lifetime of wisdom. I want to talk about some of the things because, again, these are brief. These get you thinking. They will motivate you. You've got one area where you're talking about downs versus ups. Don't let the downs keep you from seeing the ups. The present only lasts for a second. Tell me a little bit about how that thought came about, because we always seem to put more mentally, we're more mentally into the downs than the ups. We tend to forget about the good times and we focus on the bad times, is what I'm trying to say.
Well, that's a great question, Rick. And I'll give you a story that motivated me to write that, and that was years ago. And you're in Indiana there, right?
Yes.
And this is my wife is actually from Gary, Indiana.
Gary, Indiana.
Yeah, and we met at Grissom Air Force Base, which is about an hour, 45 minutes south thereabouts, in the middle of Indianapolis and Gary, so to speak. To make a long story short, we had some difficulty with a car. So we bought a new car. And the new car went out on us. We were on Highway 31 there, stalled out. And we were not happy, okay? But we ended up pulling over in front of this preacher's house who was in the neighborhood, and he saw us out there, and we were obviously not happy with each other. So he pulled us in. He's like, "Come on in. What's the matter with you guys? What's going on here?" He knew we needed some help. But the bottom line is what he said to us, as he said, was that nothing lasts forever. He said everything is an event, and the key is how you conduct yourself during that event. You know, and basically realize what's good out of what you're dealing with now. And the thing of it was that, while we were dealing with a car that was kind of stalled out at the moment, it was brand new, and we didn't have a car before that. There was a warranty on the car, so we were going to get the thing fixed, and we were fine. But at that particular moment, all we could see was the plight that we had then, because we were a little frustrated, in general, with some other stuff that had been going on in our lives. So, but that's just one example of how you can let something that's going on right then and there keep you from realizing and seeing just how good you really do have it on a whole level, if you will.
Well, in the first chapter of your book on attitude, there's one that it sort of goes along with that when you're not able to release something. And as you're reading this, it sort of like reaches out and slaps you in the face because we're guilty of this. You basically are saying anger paralyzes. And we all get caught up in anger. We can't let it go. And in fact, it does paralyze you.
That's right. Yeah, that's the only two-word quote that I have in the entire book, because it's about as concise and about as exact as you're going to get. And if you don't realize and recognize that you're angry or you're experiencing some emotion that's keeping you from thinking clearly, then you're going to make bad decisions, and hence the ripple effect of negative behavior or whatever other acting out it may result in,
Yes, the book is called The Book of Dad 2, More Quotes, Anecdotes for a Lifetime of Wisdom. Dr. Robert Benson is our guest on This Week in America. All the information on the book available at thebookofdad.net. You can also get that information by logging onto our website, thisweekinamerica.us. A lot of great information there. And we're going to close with this. Parenting and children are the ultimate anticlimax and oxymoron. We encourage them to get to a certain point, and then we want them to stop. And you talk about we can't wait for them to walk, and once they start walking, it's like, okay, 2 steps and go sit down, get back in the playpen here because we're tired of chasing you all over the place. That is so true.
Yeah, it is. It is. Yeah, I mean, and then like the rest of it has some more pointed language in it. But the thing about bottom line is that you want them to get to a certain point, but you don't want them to get too far into that point where they're behaving negatively or causing disruptions or just not doing exactly what it is they should be doing. You want them to become independent, but you don't want them to come to a point where they're distraction or destructive, and that's pretty much what that alludes to.
Dr. Benson's life has been one of taking disappointments and turning them into victories. He shares his quotes, his anecdotes, his little bits of wisdom in the new book, The Book of Dad 2. It's available, as I say, at the website, thebookofdad.net. Information at our website, thisweekinamerica.us. Dr. Benson, it's been great having you on the program. A lot of interesting information in there, a lot of fascinating background in your life as well, and we'd love to have you back on the program.
Rick, it's been truly an honor. I thank you so much, and I feel like I've gotten a lot off my chest just by talking to you, and thanks for giving me the venue to do so. I'd love to come back anytime you want me.
Well, you said the book was therapy, so being on the radio show has been part of that therapy as well, I take it.
There you go.
That's Dr. Rick. That's what we're here for. Thank you so much for joining us.
New TV show, man.
Yes. We'll be right back after these messages. You're listening to This Week in America and the Blue Funk Broadcasting Radio Network.